Hey, check out this video.
Wow. That elephant has gone wild.
Look, I think he got his tusk stuck in that truck. Like, can
He
you
is
imagine?
destroying that car.
It's like a little Tonka truck.
It's got so much power, and there's nothing they can do. They're just holding on. Like, is this gonna stop?
Look at those guys. They're just hanging on. I think the elephant's mad because it's got that yellow. Somebody put that yellow hat on its head.
Anything else yellow, he's gonna destroy. He's gonna get rid of. He's a little jealous right there.
Look at that thing.
They just have no control right now.
I know.
How many vehicles has he destroyed?
I mean, that's somebody's got to like get the. Oh, here comes somebody to help. See, off to the right there.
He's like, what?
He's like,
can I
settle
do?"
down, elephant.
There's nothing he can do right now.
There's
You just
no-
have to wait it out.
You gotta wait it out. Hopefully, the elephant will run out of energy.
Oh, maybe he's getting tired right now. Calming down. Nope,
Nope.
not done, not done. Here we go. Here's some more.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
They're just standing around watching.
Okay, Pete, so we just watched this incredible video, this crazy wild elephant. Talk to me about what does this have to do with imposter syndrome?
Well, it's actually really, before we get deep into the imposter syndrome thing, I want to kind of talk about a model of how our brain works.
Okay.
And so and I think once you understand how the brain works, you understand how imposter syndrome works, and then you really can understand how to crush it.
Okay.
Yeah, so sometimes when I think about this model, I think about this author by the name of Jonathan Haidt. And he wrote a book a long time ago. He's very prolific now, but I mean...
Talked about him a lot.
Yeah, he's great. He wrote a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. And in this book, he basically talks about the brain. And he says, the brain is not just a thing. It's kind of like multiple things. There's a lot of things in there. One of the things that's in there is what he calls the limbic system. And the limbic system is kind of what's responsible for like our emotions and our emotional responses to things and things like that.
That's a fight or flight center.
A lot of that stuff. Yep,
Okay.
exactly. And also things just like hunger and thirst and those kinds of things, right? And so what he says is that limbic system can be thought of kind of like an elephant, right? It maybe isn't the brightest thing in the world, but what it's really kind of doing is it's reacting in the moment to its environment.
Controlling what we do or where we go or
Right.
How
More
we
than
respond.
more than you think, probably. You know what I mean? And then what he says is the other part of the brain, this is kind of like the thinking part of the brain. He calls this the cortical region. Some people call it the cerebral cortex. This is the part of the brain that's responsible for planning, for thinking through things and
solving
ideas.
problems.
Exactly. All that kind of stuff, right? And so that's that. And so what he equates in the metaphor, what he equates that to is that's like a rider on top of an elephant. So if you think about that, that's a great metaphor for how behavior generally works, right? And so you think about we got all these emotions that are kind of driving us, and maybe it's driving us in ways that we don't exactly want to be going, but they are driving us.
So the rider is the thinking part.
Yeah.
The elephant is the limbic system.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the elephant, like in that video, is out of control because our emotions are really controlling us and we're not able to think clearly at that moment. And so we're going to train or work on controlling that.
Yeah. So can you see how this ties into imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So now I'm seeing the connection.
Okay.
So the elephant's trying to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And we're trying to think about, no, we want to go there. We want to try this in life.
there
We
you
want
go.
to attempt this. We want to take these risks.
Yeah.
But the elephant's trying to pull us back.
Exactly. We want to be a leader. We want to step into a leadership role. We want to try some new things. But the elephant, that limbic part of our brain, is telling you to do things that are a little bit more safe.
Yeah, so here's the trick then. So then it's actually tricking us into thinking we're not qualified, we're not worthy, we're not valuable. Therefore, return back to safety.
Yeah, so the whole main idea of this whole module is really it's about crushing imposter syndrome. And in order to crush imposter syndrome, I really think that you need to understand that our emotional brain sometimes takes over, and it does that in an effort to keep us safe.
Yeah, it wants us to return back to safety. And to crush imposter syndrome, first of all, we need to understand that's how our brains are wired.
Yeah.
That's what our brains are trying to do. So then that makes me think about that's what everybody's brain is trying to do.
All the time, right? That's what our brain, at least the elephant part of our brain, that limbic part of our brain, it's looking for possible threats. Like what's out there that could harm you. And if you're in a big group and you're in a new position, like you're in a new leadership position or something like that, that's kind of like, it could be considered like a threat. Why? Because I maybe don't exactly know what I'm doing. Yeah. And as soon as you get that feeling, you feel that threat and you start to, worry about what people are thinking about
maybe
you.
Second guess your position, second guess what you decided to step into. Yeah. And this is such an aha moment that this is actually just a brain trick.
It is.
And you're feeling it, you're experiencing it, feels so real, it feels so alive, but it's your brain tricking you into returning to safety.
Yeah, and here's the question. Do you think this is a common thing, or do you think this is just a few people feel this?
Well, I think we have some great stats about that.
Yeah, this is a cool stat. Up to 82%, according to Bravada, up to 82% of people face feelings of this imposter phenomenon. They struggle with the sense that maybe they haven't earned what they're doing, or maybe they're just kind of a fraud.
I know when you first shared this with me, it reminded me of Lolly Daskell's book, The Leadership Gap.
Yeah.
And Lolly Daskell, in that great book, she talks about how the CEOs that she works with, and she's a high-level consultant working with CEOs from around the world for many years, how 99% of them experience imposter syndrome at some point during their career.
Yeah, and those are top-level CEOs. Yeah. These are like the people that are kind of running the world, and she works with these people a lot, and even they say, and you and I have heard this too with CEOs. Right. It's like, man, I just don't really exactly feel like, or I just feel like I'm faking it most of the time. Like I'm trying to figure it out as I go.
What's beautiful about these stats is it does confirm this idea that if our brains are wired this way, then statistically a lot of people should experience this, and a lot of people should have this feeling. But I'm curious about, well, how often might that occur?
Well, here's a good statistic on that right here. This comes from Claire Josa. I actually got this off her Instagram or her LinkedIn actually. And this is a really cool visual here. And if you look at it, it's a cool one. What it says is 89% of the people that responded to her survey reported some level of imposter syndrome. But it's not just feeling this feeling. It's that feeling is affecting their performance.
What I love about this graphic is the way it breaks it down, too, to show how often do people feel this. Do they feel it daily? And you can see the number of people who reported feeling that daily. Do they feel it regularly? Whatever that means. Sometimes, rarely. A couple people said that they never feel it. I do kind of wonder about that.
Well, either they're not stepping out of their comfort zone very often.
Could be.
Or they got a huge comfort zone.
Maybe they've been in there so long that they're like, no, I'd never have imposter syndrome.
I know what I'm doing.
Could be true.
It's possible, but I do think that maybe there are times when you step out of your comfort zone that you're going to feel that, and maybe people just need to step out of their comfort zone. And it's the cool thing is it's okay to step out of your comfort zone.
And wouldn't that be the case that whenever you do step out of your comfort zone, that's when you have the opportunity for your brain to create this trick and get you to want to return to safety. It's all about stepping into new and different things and taking risks.
Yeah, think about our ancestors. What our ancestors, if they were going to go exploring maybe for a new food source, or maybe for new mates, or maybe for new sources of water, or something like that, they would have to go exploring new territory, places where they've never been before. And since they've never been there, they got to be on high alert, because if they're not on high alert, something bad is, potentially something bad is going to happen. So if they stay on high alert in these new situations.
Yeah, and our brain is constantly then sifting and searching and assessing what's the level of risk, and always encouraging us to not take too much risk. And that's a fine line. It's like a little tension point in our brain, and it's always a pull to safety and a reward for an amount of risk.
Yeah. And so I'm worried for myself. Like I kind of wonder, do I have imposter syndrome? Because I do kind of feel that way sometimes when I'm stepping into new territory. what would be like some symptoms of a person that has imposter syndrome?
Well, let's take a look at that next and just kind of dig into, well, how do you know if you have it? You've heard this word. A lot of people, I mean, it's all over Twitter or X. It's all over LinkedIn. Like, how do you actually know? Let's talk about the feelings that emerge when you have imposter syndrome.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what imposter syndrome is, and I just would be curious to know what you think. Like, what does it feel like to suffer from imposter syndrome? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. So one of the things that we hear a lot about and you see in the research is people just feel stuck. They feel like they can't take any risks. And that really comes from this feeling that their brain is already under a threat. And so taking any additional risk doesn't seem like a possibility. Yeah. And so you're just stuck in what you're doing in that position, the way you're doing it. You feel really stuck, like you can't go anywhere else.
Okay, so I think about that in terms of our elephant and rider, metaphor. It's like the elephant is saying, look, there's something out there that I'm unfamiliar with, and I don't feel like it's probably safe for us to go that way. And even though the rider might be saying, hey, we want this, we want this leadership role, we want this new job, we want this, the elephant is trying to keep you safe, saying, don't go any further. You might run into some problems, but at least potentially you could run into some problems.
Yeah, if you've ever been on a horse that won't move, that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, it does. Right? Okay, good. So what other things might I feel like if I was suffering from imposter syndrome?
Well, just this general sense of failure. You just feel like you're failing at everything that you do, and you're in this consistent loop of maybe your brain overanalyzing this a little bit and just thinking about, I am not successful at anything
that
here.
One feels really weird to me because the people that I know that tell me that they suffer from imposter syndrome, these people are like high-level people, and they're doing really great things. And so it seems weird to me that our elephant or our limbic brain would be pulling us back, telling, oh, you're doing too much here or something. I don't quite get that one.
Well, if you're the rider and you feel like you can't control this elephant, your brain is telling you, you're not able to do this. You're not able to do this over and over and over. And so that might come from the next one, which is perfectionism and being in a perfectionistic trap, which is just this cycle of thinking, if this doesn't work perfectly, I'm not going to do it. And so it's this fear of failure, and this perfectionism creates this trap where you continually revisit that idea that if it's not perfect, it was a failure. Okay,
and so I can actually kind of think of the elephant metaphor here too, because I think that the elephant in that case might be saying, look, I'm not quite ready to take this next step. Like, give me a little bit of time and I will maybe be able to prepare myself, and then we'll be able to kind of go into this dangerous little area, like maybe this tall grass or, maybe down there where I know there have been some snakes before, and give me a chance to kind of get ready for the problem with that is, you can take so much time that you fall into this ready, aim, and you never fire. You know what I mean? It's like, that's perfectionism sometimes.
Yeah, and all of these kind of connect to each other, right? Because you're really feeling stuck at that moment.
Yeah.
If it's not perfect, I'm not going to fail, so I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
Or I beat myself up because it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect. So now, it's like, oh, we got to go all the way back to square one. Oh, this is getting so exhausting.
Yeah, and you can't even see the steps or the progress that was made. You're just focused too much on the failure element of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, what else might I be experiencing?
Well, then these things lead to this perception that, well, maybe I'm just not adding value here. I'm not adding value in the role, and I'm over focused on this idea that maybe in my tribe, in my organization, my company, I'm not adding the value. And so you have this fear that's wired into us that you're going to get booted from the tribe.
Yeah. Okay. I was having a hard time connecting that from as soon as you said in the tribes, like in our group, we don't feel like we're adding enough value, even though we're probably adding a lot, but we see other people doing this and this and this. We're putting a lot of emphasis on that, but we don't give ourselves enough credit.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, what else might be going on if I'm suffering from imposter syndrome?
Well, you might be a person who really takes a lot of joy in helping others finish things, complete things, or if it's too far, you really are feeling a sense of being the source of somebody else's happiness, and that's what we mean by being a people pleaser.
Okay.
And if that's not happening in your world, then you feel like, again, you just don't have self-worth. If you're not creating other people's happiness, then it affects your self-worth.
Okay. So you just feel like you're not, doing the thing that you do the best, which is kind of serve people, something along those lines. Okay.
Exactly.
So how might this affect like how I'm thinking about other people or how I'm thinking about interacting with other people?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because if you're really processing all of these things, then it can lead to this next step where you start looking at others around you in the organization, in your nonprofit, in your court, whatever your environment is, and you start envying things that they're doing, and you see them as not having these challenges. They're getting all this stuff done.
Yeah.
They're able to talk to a challenging employee. They're able to do this great project, this incredible presentation. You start envying others
You get jealous
around
of that.
you.
Yeah, it's almost like, boy, how can they be so good at that? And that's another weird thing too, because I think about this last one. It's like comparison to other people. Like comparison and envy seem to be tied together. Like if I'm comparing myself to somebody else, it feels like almost kind of a dangerous thing to do, because as soon as I compare myself to them, and I want to kind of be like them, I instantly start to envy them. I instantly get jealous of them.
Right, and I think those two really go together. And I do think this feels like a progression of how things can happen. And so when you're comparing yourself to others, like the social media highlight reel, these are some of the feelings that people talk about when they're talking about imposter syndrome.
Okay. Well, is there anything we can do about this, or are we stuck here?
We are not stuck here.
Okay.
There are some great solutions to crushing imposter syndrome. So
All right, well, show me those.
I think we should talk about that.
For a friend, again, just show me those.
Okay.
Okay. So when I think about imposter syndrome, and I think about like what the elephant is trying to do to our brain, like
keep us safe.
It's trying to keep us safe, and I think about that. Like, imagine that you're trying to get through like an area like this. Now look at this tall grass. Like this grass is like up to our.
Hey, get back! You don't know what's in there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We don't know what's in there. That's what our brain is trying to do. Our brain is trying to keep us safe and say, hey, be careful, don't go that way. But
there could be snakes in there, there could be lions in there could be bears in there. Oh my.
Right, but the thing is what if you want to get to the other side? Like, what if you absolutely have to do it? Yeah. And so now I got to somehow find the courage, even though I'm a little bit nervous that I'm about to step on a snake or some kind of a
You have to push through it.
Yeah.
You have to crush that feeling, that fear, that discomfort.
Yeah.
You need a system for crushing that feeling in your brain.
Yeah, and you just got to keep walking and keep walking until my dog doesn't seem to be too scared.
He's very brave.
You just keep walking until you get to where you want to go, and then when you show up there, well, then I guess you just got to keep walking from there too. That's kind of how life works.
One step at a time. We're going to push through it. Now, what we need are some strategies for how to do that, how to crush imposter syndrome.
Here we go. Okay, so I think I got a pretty good idea of what imposter syndrome is right now. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe I have a few of these symptoms.
I think you do. I think I do.
Okay.
I think everybody does at different points in time.
So how do we get through this thing? This is a tough thing. Just kind of like that little walk in the woods we just took. How do we get the courage to take the steps that we need to take?
Yeah, so we're going to hack our brain.
Okay.
We're going to crush imposter syndrome with a couple of strategies here, or tools, or we call it our framework.
Okay.
And it's called Worm and Friends.
Oh, our framework. So we got 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
This is going to be less than 15 minutes because remember, we've already learned the worm, and which is just witness, obstruct, redirect, and maintain.
Right.
So we already kind of know that. So then we're just going to kind of use that same framework to get through this one.
And then we'll take it a little bit further, and we'll add another component of how you process your feelings and some of those things that are going on in your head, so you can get outside of your head with some trusted friends.
Oh, some friends like Monica and Joey.
Yes, exactly. You know them well. So we're going to learn to crush imposter syndrome and really find our true strengths. So let's start with a feeling or a thought that might happen when you're feeling imposter syndrome. It might be something like, they're going to see right through me. I feel like a fraud.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, like, there are definitely times when I feel this myself. Like,
Sure.
the times when I'm speaking in front of 100 people, 1,000 people, something like that, and I start to feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to see right through me. Especially if I'm talking to like high-level CEOs or something like that. I'm like, I'm telling these people how to do leadership. Like, these guys are going to see right through me, right?
So let's take that through the worm.
Yeah, okay. So that's the first thing you have to do, and then this is actually what I do when I feel this way, is I just have to obstruct that. Like, how do you obstruct that? And so what my strategy usually is this. It usually has something to do with my facial expression. I start with just a little bit of a smile because I recognize the fact that this is just the elephant trying to pull me back. Like, this is the elephant trying to keep me safe. And so I kind of laugh. Like, I laugh a little bit.
Smiling at that analogy, that metaphor.
I just laugh. And so a lot of times what I'll do then is I'll smile. I'll do it kind of fast and kind of hard. I'll be like, oh yeah. And then I'll put my hands in front of me like this.
Yeah.
And this is a weird thing, but I don't know too much about the science behind this, but I do know this. Sometimes when I see people that kind of put their hands in front of them like this, it makes me think that for whatever reason that they really know what they're talking about. But here's the weird thing. When I do that to myself, it makes me feel like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so you have that kind of trained into your brain.
I must.
That is a way to obstruct that thought.
That's
so then
my
how do you
obstruct.
redirect
Yeah,
it?
so for me, this is kind of weird, but I'm a big fan of Jen Sincero. I don't know if you've ever read any of her books.
No, I have not.
Oh, she wrote a great book a long time ago.
List now.
It's good. It's called You Are a Badass. I
want to be a badass.
Yeah, you do. And that's what I do. As soon as I'm like, okay, I am a badass. But Jen Sincero, she wrote this book, You Are a Badass, and then she wrote like a bunch of follow-up books like You're a Badass with Relationships, You're a Badass with Money, You're a Badass, You're a Badass, You're a Badass. And all I really do to myself is I just say, I am a badass.
She found a whole niche and she just reproduced that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I just redirect myself and I kind of I channel my inner Jen Sincero and I'm like, okay, I am a badass.
So then how do you maintain that redirection in your brain?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. Now, think about the elephant here for a second. What we need to do is we need to distract the elephant for long enough to get the elephant to kind of wander out into that tall grass.
Forget about that fear. I got it. That makes sense.
So you're going to kind of like play a little trick, right? Because let's face it, sometimes some psychologists say that we have around 10,000 thoughts a day, right? So really all we got to do is distract the elephant.
It's like some peanuts over here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the main thing, the peanuts.
Exactly. So I say to myself, in that particular case, I would say to myself something like this. I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a reason. And I kind of repeat that to myself. And it's really what it's doing is it's just kind of distracting the elephant. It's reminding me that I actually am here for a reason. And that's the other really important thing I think about worm is that you really should try to tell yourself the truth. And then I do know that I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a reason because I do have a lot of expertise in this area. I may not know everything about running a company like some of these big high-level CEOs that I'm speaking with or something like that, but I am here for a reason. I'm here to tell them some important things that they need to know about how they should deal with their people, right?
So then that replaces the other thought that you obstructed, and it overwrites it. And now your brain is focused on this piece of thinking.
Absolutely.
So that's a great one. So, okay, so let's take another one. Okay. We're going to jump down a little bit to, I can't handle this responsibility. So that's my thought that I've witnessed.
That's a common thing. I don't know if you ever feel that one yourself.
I do.
I feel that one.
I've felt it many times.
Like we have such a big responsibility here, and we've done that in our other jobs. We've done that in this company, in this business. It's like such a big responsibility. Boy, this is getting overwhelming.
I became a father and had to change my son's diaper. I was like, come on, I can't handle this responsibility.
You grew up on a farm. You know all that stuff. All right. Yeah, but no, that's exactly right. Things can feel overwhelming at times. And so if you're feeling that, man, I can't handle this responsibility. Again, you can do this a lot of different ways. You should probably choose the obstruct that works best for you. But in this particular case, again, I kind of smile and laugh a little bit because I'm kind of laughing at the elephant, like, would you shut up, you stupid elephant? And then what I do for this one is I typically stand up tall. Again, there's some science behind the body language of things like this, but some people say if you stand up tall, you're gaining confidence. I don't know if you ever heard any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just kind of the power pose or different kinds of poses.
The superhero pose, something like that. So I just do that. I kind of stand up tall, like military style. Like I think I almost imagine myself in the military. I'm standing at attention. And that does kind of give me a little bit of internal, it feels like a little bit of internal strength.
I love that. So then how are you redirecting or distracting your brain away from that
Yeah,
thought?
yeah. So again, you kind of start the elephant saying, oh, you can't really do this. And then you just like slap the elephant in the face. That's
Gotta go a different way.
That's what the obstruct is, right?
Yep,
and then, but then the redirect for me is simply like, it's something like this. I redirect to something that is more closely associated with my final outcome, with my desired final outcome. And so for me, the quick one is just simply this, is just, I love this pressure. Right, because that's actually true for me. I actually perform better, like a lot of procrastinators. Which I used to be a bad procrastinator. I'm getting a little better at that.
Now you're a good procrastinator.
Yeah, I'm a good procrastinator. But I always in my life I really have performed better under pressure. Like when there's a little bit of a time crunch or a little bit of a time deadline, I perform. So it's a true thing for me. And again,
I think that's a true thing for a lot of people. That we need some pressure to be able to move to another level. Because if you don't have some pressure, you're going to have a tendency to just stay where you're at. And so pressure is a good thing.
I do love pressure. It feels good to me. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like the pressure. I'm like, to me, it feels like going on a roller coaster. I like pressure. It just feels good to me. It excites me. And that's kind of my redirect.
So then you've distracted your brain with this redirect of loving pressure. How do you maintain that new thought?
Well, again, you got to say something true. And it really helps to kind of rehearse this ahead of time. So if you know that you have a very typical problem that you can witness often, it's worth your time to think about ahead of time what your maintain is going to be. I like to say something like this. I say, I am capable and I will figure this out. I am capable and I will figure this out. I am capable and I will figure this out. And again, how long am I doing that for? 20 seconds, 30, maybe a minute at the most. By that time, you've distracted the limbic system. You've distracted the elephant and you're already on to the next thing.
Well, that is a great example of how to deal with that one. Now, I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier of these are the different things that you do. Yeah. So are these the right answers for people to do for each of these scenarios?
Well, there's a lot here to pick from, right?
Sure.
And some of these things that you witness, you might be able to come up with your own obstruct.
Yeah, like what if it doesn't work for me?
Then you probably should either try a different one from our list or you're going to need to make up your own.
Okay, well that makes sense.
And that's why we're including this worksheet in this module, because this will give you a chance to think through, what are the like things that you sometimes catch yourself doing when it comes to like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever. What are some of the common things? Well, go ahead and list those things out for yourself. And maybe you're not going to do that all in one sitting. Maybe you're going to have to come back to this from time to time and go, oh, I caught myself saying this today.
Yeah. This is the way to now personalize it, right? And figure out what works for you. And then keep track of that and keep practicing this, because if you don't practice it, it doesn't help you. So you have to keep practicing this strategy.
Especially in the moment, right? Because when that elephant starts running, that rider might not be able to do much about it in the moment, right? But if you practice it ahead of time, it's kind of like you're training the elephant. You're training your limbic system to kind of know what to do in that kind of critical juncture.
So that's worm.
Yep.
And so we're building off of that, because that was a previous strategy. We're building off of it to the and friends part.
Okay,
so
let's go.
Can we get to that?
Let's go to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a really important idea, and this is some of the stuff that comes out of the research that you've done on this. So talk a little bit about what is the purpose of this and friends part? What is this reflection all about?
Well, a lot of what is happening when we experience imposter syndrome is in our head.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So this is designed to get you out of your head.
Okay.
And so I'll give you a couple examples here. So one of the things that you can do is you can reflect and assess your skills and really understand from the list that you've created all the qualifications that you really have.
Okay.
And a lot of these things work together.
Okay.
But you have a lot of talents and you have a lot of qualifications. And by writing them down, you're starting to get it out of your head. You're putting it physically on paper. So that's one approach to that.
Okay, I got it. So basically you're saying if I do some of these reflections, that will help me at least sort of internalize some of these things about maybe where I am actually qualified.
Yeah, and again, when you get it out of your head and you put it down on paper, now it's starting to break that thought process down a little bit, and you physically have done something with that, which is important as part of this process of crushing it.
Okay, so great. So that's kind of like putting it on paper. What is the friends part of this? What's that all about?
Okay, so you need some trusted friends that you can talk to about some of these things. So let's go to the second one, where you share some of your feelings of the imposter syndrome that you have with some teammates, with some friends, so that, again, it gets you outside of your head and helps you process it with somebody else.
What if I don't have any friends?
Well, you can share with me.
Okay.
But I have a great example of this because I was talking to my team not too long ago, and I do a lot of public presentations. And I was talking about how whenever I do a public presentation, I just really feel like it's really hard to find the words that I want to really say what I want to say. It's hard to be articulate, and it's such a struggle for me mentally when I'm speaking and talking publicly.
Sounds
and this
exhausting.
is a thought that I have running through my head.
That's really weird because I feel like you are a tremendous public speaker.
Well, thank you.
But no, I mean, but that's kind of imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
It's like I feel this way, but that's not the perception of the people around me.
And my team said to me, we are so surprised that that's how you think, because that's not how we see you when you're presenting. And that was really powerful to me to actually hear their words saying that. It really helped me re-examine how fair am I being to myself in the way I'm assessing myself and what I'm doing. And it's always good to be self-critical, but when you're too self-critical, you're kind of stuck in that imposter syndrome. Like you're not good enough, you're not adding value. It's a perfectionistic trap.
So that is kind of like from using our elephant metaphor again. That's like telling the elephant and training the elephant, like, this is okay. You're actually pretty dang good at this, elephant.
Right. Okay. Right. And so we're going to keep that elephant's confidence higher and be able to control it a little bit better in the future.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff on here that you really should do for that reason. And, if you get down to, if you do all of these things, it should help you a fair amount. Is there any other one you specifically look at here?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you're able to talk with others about your failures, because sometimes when we're struggling with imposter syndrome, we're trying to hide that. We're trying to keep that from others. And what you actually need to do is to understand and celebrate that failures are part of the process of getting better every day. We're not perfect. We're going to fail, and make that more acceptable in your head. And you do that by having conversations about your failures, being vulnerable, telling your stories, putting that out on the table. And what you're going to learn is that when you do that, other people are also going to do that. And you're going to see how common failure is as part of everybody's experience.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, you don't really fail. You either win or you grow. It's one or the other. And really, that is an important thing in kind of crushing imposter syndrome, is just realizing that, no one of us is going to really be able to do everything. That's why we live in groups. That's why we have groups.
Sometimes, we're a little programmed to be really fearful of failure. And it's important to understand that so many successful people, from Michael Jordan to Albert Einstein, Ben Franklin, so many people have went through so much failure in life, and they have learned how to leverage it to get better.
Yeah.
Okay, Pete, I think it's time we wrap it up.
It is time to wrap this up. One thing I do before we get, to get the final wrap up here, I just kind of want to let people know, we were sort of joking when we said, hey, if you don't have any friends, whatever. But, sometimes people just don't have someone to talk to in that way, or they just don't want to, they'd rather talk to maybe a stranger. Well, that's one of the things we do. We do executive coaching and that kind of thing. And if you're in that position, you can really just go to liftteams.com and you can go to the contact stuff and find us, and we'll get you connected up with either ourselves or somebody else that can kind of coach you through some of this stuff.
So, Pete, I was wondering, who does not have imposter syndrome?
Well, so in the spirit of wrapping this thing up, as we were thinking about how do we wrap this thing up, and I was thinking about where's some quotes and things like that, and we came across this amazing quote about who does not have imposter. You know who doesn't get imposter syndrome? cats. Not only does every cat know they're a cat, I think every cat believes firmly with conviction that they are the best possible cat.
So
the prime example of a cat. The most cat a cat could be.
So since we're not cats.
We're not cats.
We are humans.
All right.
Let's go to some human quotes.
Yeah, let's go to some other people.
So Maya Angelou,
Yeah.
what a fantastic author.
What a great author,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
she's no longer with us, but she said, I've written 11 books.
Yeah, and
but
good books too, by the
Good
way.
books.
Yeah.
But each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find me out.
Yeah, now they're going to find me out. Like, I thought I had them fooled, but now this time they're going to...
Prolific author,
Yeah.
still dealing with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And we're just pointing out that, again, all people have
Yeah,
imposter
yeah.
syndrome at some point in their career.
You think that's a big one? Maybe you've heard of Maya, maybe you haven't. How about this one? Most of us have heard of Michelle Obama, right? Of all the people you would think that wouldn't have imposter syndrome, she says this. She says, "I still have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. That feeling that you shouldn't take me seriously.
Yeah.
You know, what do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities about our power and what that power is."
Well, to put the final wrap on it, imposter syndrome happens to all of us.
Yeah.
It's in our brain. We're wired that way. The trick is how to crush it is to come back to those strategies, practice the worm, practice the friends, process it with other people, get outside of your head, and you will be well on your way to being an unstoppable leader.